Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Madison if you're new here. Today I wanted to make a video just talking about the struggles that I've faced in my fitness journey, lessons that I've learned, and hopefully help some of you out there that are struggling with the same things because you're not alone. I do want to start the video off by saying trigger warning to anyone. I am talking about eating disorders and counting calories and just weight loss and all of those things. So if any of those subjects are triggering for you, maybe you don't watch this video or watch it and be mindful. I recently have just felt very called to share my story, share my experience, hopefully help some of you out there. I'm sorry if I sound super congested. I'm getting over a cold, so sorry about my voice. Also, if I look down, I have my notes right here. To start off, the other day I was listening to a Mel Robbins podcast episode. Love her podcast, so good. And she was talking about the importance of not struggling alone. She gave the example of her breast implant surgery and how she did it and immediately regretted it, but did not want to talk about it because she was so embarrassed because she made that choice for herself and just felt embarrassed talking about it. So she was silent about it for like 3 years before she decided to do anything about it. And the whole idea around that podcast episode was like, do not let yourself wallow in self-pity, I guess. Because your problems seem so much more extreme when you keep them all in your head. That kind of led me to wanting to make this YouTube video just talking about my struggles, because I know that I'm not the only one that has struggled with these things. I'm still navigating it, and I felt like for the longest time like I wanted to talk about this, but I had to wait until I had it all figured out, until I was all the way healed from these things before I could speak on it. And I feel like I will never feel 100% ready to speak on it, and so I just need to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and just do it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the binge and restrict cycle that I have been stuck in for 3 or 4 years now. I started counting my macros and getting into calorie counting and all of that in the beginning of my fitness journey. I would say in like 2021. I noticed in the beginning that the macro counting felt very restrictive for me, and so I did it for like 3 or 4 months and then stopped because I felt like I was thinking about food too much. So I just approached my fitness journey with just trying to eat, you know, nutrient dense foods, but not counting the numbers, because I am such a numbers person and I'm such a perfectionist and very OCD, and I felt like I had to be 100% on my macros, otherwise I was failing. So I realized that and I didn't track for a while. Fast forward to 2022, I had a boyfriend at the time and he wanted to do a mini cut in the beginning of the year, so I decided to do that as well. So I got back into counting, and it started this whole cycle for me of restricting and then binging, because I set my calories lower for like a deficit, and they weren't anything crazy, but it was a good deficit for me. And so I would approach my days being like, okay, hit my macros, like have, you know, all my macro friendly meals, and then by the end of the day I'd be so hungry. So I'd either try to ignore my hunger, or I would have something to, you know, like feed myself because I was so hungry. But then I'd be like, oh, well, you already ruined your day, so you might as well go crazy. So then I would eat everything in sight. And like, it wasn't like I was going crazy and having pizza or ice cream or all of these things, which is totally fine. It wasn't like I was doing that. I would make like protein oatmeal and yogurt with granola and fruit, and then I would be so stressed out because I went over my macros. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, my body was so hungry and I was just ignoring it for so long. So I fell into this bad cycle, and it actually made me sad. Today is October 15th, I believe, 2024. Yeah, October 15th, 2024. And I opened my Snapchat memories from today. And 2 years ago today, I had made a video because I would like talk to some of my friends about this. I guess I had like a binge night the night before where I ate more than I felt was appropriate. And so then today, 2 years ago, I went to the gym and walked on the treadmill for an hour, and then I made a video after about how I felt so much better and like how I wanted to get out of this cycle, but I didn't know where to start. And I also have kept the journal for a long time. Like, I'm very big on journaling. I've journaled since 2020, like during COVID times when I started getting into journaling, and I have so many journal entries just talking about like, I know I'm going to get through this hard time, like I know I'm going to get out of the binge and restrict cycle. My relationship with food sucks right now, but like I know I can make it better. I'm excited for the day when my thoughts are not consumed about food 24/7. And so being able to like look back on that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have struggled for so long, and it makes me so sad because I've tried to just act like it's fine and it's normal and like, oh well, like this is what you got yourself into, so now you have to live with it. Which is not true. Like I can get myself out of it. So yeah, I started macro tracking just to feel in control and feel like I could do a cut and lose as much body fat as possible. In that time period, like 2022, I was in the mindset of like I need to be the leanest, most petite version of myself as I possibly can be. And my boyfriend at the time told me that I would look better if I was leaner and didn't have as much of like a curvy body, and that really messed with my head. And so I really thought that I needed to be this small petite little thing, and I just needed to not eat enough and do crazy cardio and all of that just to get to this small frame, which like I've never had before. But I thought if I just dieted hard enough and I had enough willpower and strength to get there, that I would get there and then I could maintain it easily and I could go back to living a happy life. But I needed to just be so dialed in during that time, which is just not the case. That's just not my body type, and that's not where my body sits comfortably, so trying to push myself to that extreme is just ridiculous. The next thing that I want to talk about is orthorexia. The orthorexia issues started at the beginning of this year in 2024, and I didn't really know like what was going on. I just knew that my relationship with food was the worst it had ever been in my entire life, and the way that I was thinking about food was not normal. I remember one day I was really struggling and I went onto ChatGPT and I was like, how to know if I have an eating disorder? And it pulled up 8 or 9 different like symptoms, or yeah, I guess like symptoms that you would have if you were struggling with an eating disorder. And I started crying because every single one of those things I was struggling with, and I felt like I wasn't sick enough to like have an eating disorder. Yeah, I felt like I wasn't sick enough to have an eating disorder, but I knew that the way that I was thinking about food all the time and restricting and all of that was not normal. So one day I was on my Instagram Explore page and I saw something about orthorexia, and I had never heard of orthorexia before. I'm going to pull up the definition. According to WebMD, orthorexia is an unhealthy focus on eating in a healthy way. Eating nutritious food is good, but if you have orthorexia, you obsess about it to a degree that can damage your overall well-being. Orthorexia symptoms are worry about food quality, so high levels of concern about the quality and sources of food. Avoid going out to eat or avoid eating food prepared by others. Burying yourself in food research. I was constantly trying to figure out like what's the right diet for me. What do I need to cut out? Do I need to go dairy-free, gluten-free, all of those things, because that's what's trending. I'm refusing to eat a broad range of foods. I was very just stuck in like egg whites, cottage cheese, like very clean things, because I was so scared of what other food would do to me. Fear of losing control, just being like around like bad foods or like foods that I thought were bad, or not having like a perfect day with my macros. Being overly critical of your friends' food choices, which I never voiced that, but I did find myself being like, how do they not think about the seed oils that are in that, or the dyes that are in that, or like these little things. I'm like, how do they not think about that? I never said it, but in my head I was like, how are they not thinking about it? And then just like finding yourself in this cycle of constant worry about food, because there is a difference between like eating healthy to fuel your body and feel good because you care about your body and you want to put good into your body. But when it's consuming your entire life and all of your thoughts all the time, that's when it's different. And so when I started learning about that, I was like relieved in a sense, because I was like, okay, I do have a problem. And I think I struggled so much with not being sick enough. Like I wasn't anorexic, I wasn't bulimic or anything like that. So I felt like, okay, just tough it out, like you're fine, you're making it up, it's all in your head. So when I found about orthorexia, I was like, okay, like I'm not crazy, and that gave me some peace of mind because I know like I can get myself out of it. I remember this year for my birthday, I always go to this like Japanese steakhouse restaurant for my birthday with my family, and I love it. It's like a hibachi style place. This year in particular, I remember being so stressed out about going. I've never stressed out about going there before, ever. I go every year for my birthday. I love it. It's my favorite. But this year, I found myself the day before my birthday, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna get filet and scallops, and so that'll be about this many calories, and I'll probably put this oil on there, and just like trying to calculate all these things. And I was like, okay, so basically I need to fast the whole day before, or like, you know, the morning before, so that I have enough room in my calories, or like in my macros, to have this food. And I knew that I had never thought like this before, but I was like, oh, that's just what happens like when you're tracking macros. So I really did. I had one small snack at 1 p.m. and I was so hungry. But I was like, no, you have to save all of your calories for this dinner. And then I got to dinner and I went with like my boyfriend and my family, and I remember being so concerned about how much I was eating and how much what they thought about how much I was going to eat. But I ate my entire plate. All the fried rice, the vegetables, the sauce, the meat, the ice cream, all of it. And I did not feel full, but I knew it was like a good amount of food. But I did not feel full, and I was like, what is wrong with me? So I was constantly just like fighting with myself about, like, I would get mad at myself if I wasn't full after a meal, and I would just be like, well, that sucks, like you have to wait until you're allowed to have your next meal because you only have a certain amount of calories for the day. And just like all of these little occurrences, but they were daily occurrences because you eat every single day. And so it's not like you can just, like with an eating disorder, an eating issue, it's not like you can just like stop cold turkey like you can with like alcohol or drugs or anything like that, because you have to eat every single day. And so I just feel like I was constantly at war with myself, constantly getting mad at myself if I was hungry after a meal. And I also had lost my hunger cues a little bit. Well, actually a lot. I had lost my hunger cues in the process of macro tracking, and so I could never, like, I felt like I was always hungry and I could never feel full ever. So that's part of what led to like the binging and stuff too. It's such a cycle of binging one day and then like, okay, I need to restrict all day, or I need to fast all day so that I can make up for what I did last night, which is so ridiculous to think about or to say out loud. Like, it sounds silly, but in my mind, like, it was so serious. The next issue that I wanted to talk about is body dysmorphia. I remember in the beginning of my fitness journey and like posting on social media, people would joke on TikTok and be like, oh, like body dysmorphia or God complex, like what are we choosing today? And it was like a joke type of a thing, and I was like, oh, like we all have a little bit of body dysmorphia, which I'm sure everyone struggles a little bit with body dysmorphia, but like the extreme level that mine got to this year was concerning. I'm going to pull up the definition of body dysmorphia. Okay, body dysmorphic disorder is a mental health condition where you can't stop thinking about one or more perceived defects or flaws in your appearance, a flaw that appears minor or can't be seen by others, but you may feel so embarrassed, ashamed, and anxious that you may avoid social situations. Symptoms include being extremely preoccupied with a perceived flaw in appearance that to others cannot be seen or appears minor. Belief that others take special notice of your appearance in a negative way and mock you. Engaging in behaviors aimed at fixing or hiding a perceived flaw that are difficult to resist or control. Avoiding social situations. Body checking, that was a big one. Okay, I'm sorry if the lighting keeps changing. The sun outside is like all over the place and the autofocus keeps going out. Oh, there it goes again. Yeah, sorry, we're just gonna have to deal with this lighting situation. So I feel like one thing that really made my body dysmorphia so much worse was posting on Instagram every single day and feeling like I needed to do the cute little strappy bra and short sets, which I love, but like there would be days where I felt like bloated or inflamed, but I felt like I had to wear, it's so funny saying it out loud, but I felt like I had to wear these outfits because that's like part of my social media presence, is like cute outfits at the gym. So I would be so self-conscious, like if I was wearing it and then I did feel like bloated, I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone at the gym is looking at how bloated I am today. Or just like saying such mean things to myself. And I would take photos of myself every single day and then constantly be looking at them. And same thing with videos, like during my workouts and stuff, I would constantly be criticizing myself, looking at like my back roll, or looking at how my shoulder blades are uneven, or like these small things. I became so critical of myself, and I was judging myself so hard that I believed everyone else around me was judging me that hard too. Looking back now, I'm like, I wish I could see how I actually looked, because like what I saw in those photos was not like what is real. And I would just hate on myself all the time, and I was telling myself that I was overweight and that I needed to lose more body fat if I wanted to look strong enough in order to be a good fitness influencer, or to get more training clients I needed to look absolutely diced. And just all of these things, like these are stories that I'm telling myself and that I was believing. And I'm very like OCD and like perfectionist tendencies. I think I mentioned that earlier. And so I have these crazy standards for myself, and I felt like I could never hit them. So then I was constantly feeling even more and more like a failure. Okay, my camera died, so I hope it's better. But I was just talking about how I felt like I could never get to the body fat percentage that I wanted to get to, or just like reach these standards that I had set for myself. And so that turned into me hating on myself even more. And I was trying so hard to be like, I want to be a positive influence on people on social media. I didn't want to show up when I was feeling so bad. And I was also embarrassed to talk about how I was feeling, because I felt like it would discredit me and that would make me feel even more stupid than I already did. And so I just didn't want to talk about it. I struggled with this the beginning of this year. This is also during the period of time where I was lifting really heavy, because I felt like, okay, you chose bodybuilding, so now you need to be the most jacked person ever, or like the most jacked version of yourself, which that's not what I wanted for myself. And I was very conflicted because I felt like I had to do that. And I felt like you can't just lift heavy for lower body and like do Pilates for upper body, or lift lighter for upper body. Like I felt like people were so judgmental about that. And for some reason, it was so important to me how I was perceived by others that it didn't really matter how I felt about myself. So I got a lot leaner, but I felt very muscular, and I did not feel feminine at all. And that caused me to hate on myself even more. And I felt like I'm very dialed in with the gym, and I'm very consistent, and I love the gym. But I was doing it in a way that was making me hate myself even more, because I didn't like what I was seeing. So I just felt so lost. So a few lessons I've learned from all of these struggles is, number one, the more that you try to control something, the more it's going to control you. For me, this is like my obsession with food and my food struggles. I felt like it was a lack of willpower. And so I felt like if I could just control myself in these situations where I felt like binging, that I would get better. And what I've realized now is, like, if you constantly restrict and then binge, it's not necessarily a lack of willpower. Like, your body is tired of you saying no when it's trying to communicate to you that it needs food. And I think that goes for anything in life. Like, the more you try to control something, the more it's going to control you, because you're thinking about it so much. And the reality is, like, you're very limited on what you can control in life. If you're fixated on something, you're just going to spiral and feel even worse because you can't control it. The next thing I learned is that struggling alone or struggling in silence is just going to make, like, the disordered eating voice in your head even more serious. For me, like, I isolated myself a lot around, like, my family. Like, I would not eat dinners with them. Same thing, like, if I was with my boyfriend's family and his mom made dinner, I would be so stressed out because I didn't want to seem rude for not eating her food, but I could not allow myself to enjoy it because I didn't know everything that was in it and how many calories it was and all of these things. And I would just struggle, and I would struggle in silence, and I would feel crazy and get really mad at myself because I couldn't just be normal in these situations. So I think isolating yourself allows the disordered eating voice in your head to become louder and louder, and therefore have more control over you, talking about it to anyone can help. It helps to get the thoughts out of your mind. It helps to, like, for me, when I say these things out loud, some of them like sound silly to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds silly saying it out loud. Like, in my mind, it is so serious, and that thought has so much control over me, but I don't need to allow it to have control over me. Kind of touching on the next thing then, we are all just the observers of our own thoughts. Just because you have a thought does not make it true. Reminding myself of that, especially when this disordered eating voice comes back into my head, just reminding myself, like, just because I'm thinking that does not mean it's true. I don't have to listen. I don't have to believe that. That's not true. And slowly over time, that disordered eating voice will have less power and control over you, but you do have to challenge it and like talk back to it sometimes, which might sound crazy if you haven't struggled with this, but if you are struggling with any of these things that I've touched on, then you understand like the disordered eating voice in your head. And just realizing too that like that voice is not your identity, that is not you, and you don't have to let it control you. Your body is not your whole identity, and I know, again, when I say it out loud, I'm like, duh, but in my mind, with like being on social media and everything, like being a fitness influencer, I felt like my body was my whole personality, and so I was willing to sacrifice so many things just to get this physique that I thought would make me happy. And I felt like the closer I got to that physique, like the more and more unhappy I was, because I was missing out on life. Like, even if I would challenge myself to go out to dinner with my family, or like do a coffee drink that has more calories than I would allow myself to do normally, I would be there, but like mentally I was not present because I was being so hard on myself and getting mad at myself for being a failure, if that makes sense. You do not have to be embarrassed about your struggles, because I think for me, I was so embarrassed for so long because I felt crazy and I didn't want to like be the boy that cried wolf. I wanted to, for me, I felt like I wasn't sick enough to have a problem and to like talk about it. And I was like, maybe once it gets really bad, like then I'll get help and I'll get it all figured out. But that just led me to struggling even more. And even just talking to anyone, to your mom, to your friend, like a friend that you trust, or even just journaling. Like if you're not ready to talk about it with other people, writing it down helps to get the thoughts out of your head, and seeing them on paper again makes them feel a little bit less serious than they do in your mind. And when I say like less serious, it's not about, like, I'm not invalidating the way that you feel. Your feelings are valid, but being able to put it on paper just or speak to someone else gives it less weight than it does in your mind. If you just have all these thoughts in your mind, they seem so true and so real and can just have so much control over you. But when you get it out on paper, you're like, is that actually true? Also, don't compare yourself to anyone on social media, because you have no idea what is going on behind the scenes. People only post what they want to post. I think it's so easy to compare yourself to these influencers that do their day in the life, their what I eat in a day, like talk about like their dietary restrictions, and be like, oh, well, I want to look like them, so I need to cut out dairy and cut out gluten and do all of these things that they do so that I can look like them. And like, oh my gosh, they have so much control and discipline and willpower. Like, I want to be like them. You know, it can cause you to feel like you're not doing good if you don't have the willpower that you're trying to have, or can't stick to the same diet or whatever it is, because you don't even know if that influencer is actually following that. So yeah, I am in a phase of still working through all of this and figuring it out, trying to get back with intuitive eating, which can be hard after macro tracking for so long and relying on an app on your phone to tell you how much to eat and what to eat and when to eat. You get so used to ignoring your body that it's hard to intuitive eat and understand what your body's telling you, because you've ignored it for so long that you're like, I don't even know what I want. And so it is hard, and I am feeling a lot better than I was even just like a month ago, but I'm not healed all the way yet, and I think it's a constant journey. But again, like I said in the beginning of the video, I for the longest time wanted to wait until I was like completely healed before I could talk about it, because I was embarrassed and I wanted to be able to tell you all like, this is what you need to do to fix it and to help it. But I think that there is, I guess, comfort in a sense, or like, I guess comfort in knowing that someone else is working through the same thing that you are, and like, it's okay if you don't have it all figured out, because we're all just trying to navigate life. Like, This is all our first time living and we're all trying to figure it out. It's okay if you don't have all the answers, but this is me just like talking to myself. But yeah, just don't be so hard on yourself. If you're struggling with any of these things, don't struggle alone. That's my biggest thing. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram if you want to chat about it. I am always open to chat about these kinds of things because I know how isolating it can feel when you're struggling with these things, especially talking with people that don't struggle with these things. You kind of just feel crazy, like explaining the thoughts that you're having or the things that you're doing. Like you just feel crazy and it can make you feel even worse. So I will always be here to talk. You're doing amazing. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just be kind to yourself because you don't want to spend so much of your life hating on yourself and trying to control all of these little things that will make you happy, because you might get to the end of your life and be like, I did not have fun because I was trying to be so serious. So that's all that I have for you today. Thank you for watching. If anything that I said resonated with you, comment down below and let me know. If you like talking about these videos, if you like these videos that are talking about these more like serious subjects, let me know and I will make more of them. It is like nerve-wracking to be so vulnerable and talk about these things because it can feel embarrassing and I feel like stupid saying some of these things out loud because I feel crazy. But I know that I'm not the only one struggling, and if I can help like one person even just feel less alone, and we can work through it together, like that's what I want to do. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching and I will talk to you soon.